In today's video, we're looking at the latest trade updates on Jakob Chychrun in Arizona. Plus, we have some additional trade talk, but we might see a deal between the Canucks and Penguins. Plus, we have news out of Ottawa as well and potential moves we may see there. We have 5 new waiver claims here today after all the players were placed on waivers yesterday. We have some more signings as well and some other key demotions among some prominent rookies. We'll discuss all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a ton of NHL news and some trade rumors to take a look at today. First up, in case you wasn't aware, we had a lot of players on waivers yesterday. Over 60 players were placed on waivers because, of course, NHL teams had until 5 o'clock Eastern time today to submit their opening night rosters, and they had to finalize and be cap compliant. Of course, you can have a maximum 23-player roster. Some had to go less than that, depending on how much space they had. A lot of cap gymnastics were being had. A lot of players moved up and down. Some of it's just paper transactions, and let's get right into it. We do only have one new player on waiver today, and that's the Anaheim Ducks placing forward Glenn Godden on waiver. So I've seen a lot of comments on social media today wondering what additional players were going to be potentially waived and cut and all that. And it's like, I think that's all done, because if the rosters had to be submitted by 5 o'clock Eastern time today, even if you placed a player on waivers today, they're not going to be either cleared or available to either be taken by another team or demoted until tomorrow, which is too late. So I didn't expect there to be a whole lot of active waiver stuff going on today, except for some potential claims. And like I said, we had 5 of them. We had Brett Leeson of the Washington Capitals being claimed by the Anaheim Ducks. So the young forward will go to Anaheim, be on their opening night roster, and get more of an opportunity. The Arizona Coyotes claimed goaltender Connor Ingram, who comes over from Nashville. Ingram, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, was one of the goalies that I thought might have the best chance of getting claimed. To be honest, based on what the Coyotes have between Vejmelka and Jonas Johansson, Ingram is definitely has a better showing than Johansson. He should be able to stick there and be the consistent backup at the very least this year, maybe even challenge for some starts. So that's a good opportunity for Connor Ingram right now. So we'll see how things work out for him in Arizona, but definitely an interesting young goaltender. The Chicago Blackhawks claimed defenseman Jerard Fagerberg. Of course, another opportunity there to add some toughness on their back end and not have to rush a prospect. We know the Blackhawks have a pretty depleted lineup this year, and obviously having a few vets around to kind of spare some of the prospects would be good, and Tenori adds that. The Winnipeg Jets also claimed forward Axel Jonsson-Falaby, who comes also over from Washington. So the Capitals lost 2 players on waivers today. He is a really good speed guy, has good penalty killing skills. I know the Winnipeg Jets coach Rick Bowness was talking today about how assistant coach Scott Arniel was familiar with him from his time working with the Capitals, and certainly thought he would be a good fit for what they're looking for. So he goes from the Capitals to the Jets, and then the Florida Panthers also claimed Josh Mahura, who was on waivers from the Anaheim Ducks. So certainly an interesting move there. I know the Florida Panthers are a team that's certainly going to be interesting to watch here. They have some pretty tight cap situations and won't have a full 23-man roster down in Sunrise to start the year. So obviously there was a lot of other notable players on waivers that did not get picked up. There was a lot of talk and wondering about a guy like Nick Foligno in Boston, if he might get picked up by Philly, considering the connection there with former head coach John Tortorella. Of course, Foligno was his team captain in Columbus for like 5 or 6 years, so obviously a lot of people thought that might happen, where Tortorella's really trying to change the culture with the Flyers and really instill a stronger work ethic and a whole bunch of other things that he's trying to do there, and Foligno might help him. But at the same time, though, you got to manage it from a cap perspective, business perspective, and all that. It never came to be. Mike Riley, another defenseman in Boston. I think what scared people off there is the fact that he has a second year on his deal. It's not just this year. He's making $3 million for the next 2 years. So sometimes term turns people off when it comes to making waiver claims. Zach McEwen, Adam Gaudette, Victor Mete, Philippe Myers, all players I thought maybe would get picked up and were not. So obviously teams, elected for the players that we talked about as being claimed, a lot of them have, some different unique skill sets that they were certainly looking for. Now, we also got some signings today. The Tampa Bay Lightning made a very interesting signing, something that I don't think anybody saw coming. They signed Pierre-Cedric Lebrie, who's a 35-year-old left winger. Now, he was never drafted, but he did play with Tampa before. He actually appeared during the 2011 to 2014 season. He appeared in 46 games for Tampa. Was never obviously, never get a lot of attention, never really put up much in the way of points. Since then, he's played 8 different seasons in the minors and a couple seasons in Europe in between all that. So he's got a lot of pro hockey experience. A lot of it, though, was minor pro. Like I said, a lot of AHL, a little bit of East Coast League, a little bit of NHL before, a couple of years in the DEL over in Europe. So an interesting spot. I mean, obviously, because of the signing when it came, he had to go on the opening night roster. So he's 35. He's Quebec born. Played around a lot in different areas and does have a former connection to Tampa before, but I don't know if anybody really seen that signing coming. The Vegas Golden Knights have finally come to terms with Nicholas Hague. So he was one of the few remaining RFA holdouts on the day that opening rosters are required. Hague gets his deal. I do wonder if they might have been doing some cap gymnastics there as well. I might have played a role to see exactly what they could offer him. They ended up signing him to a 3-year deal, and his cap hit is $2.29450. So I think that's a unique number. I think that they were probably waiting to get everything mathematically calculated out to see exactly what they could get him to be as close to what he and his agent were looking for. So Hague is now officially under contract. I don't know if he'll be playing right away, considering he missed all of training camp. The Ottawa Senators also announced today that they're signing Derek Brassard to a 1-year deal after going through training camp on a PTO. He gets a 1-year deal at league minimum $750,000. This turned out to me, I think, a real good signing for Ottawa. Brassard seemed to get better as the preseason went along. Wasn't super flashy, but he proved that when he had the opportunity during preseason games to play with some of the top 6 players and more offensive guys, that he contributed. He played a bit on the power play, did well there as well. So he can be a guy that can move up and down your lineup. He can be a 4th-line player. And DJ Smith also confirmed that Brassard isn't necessarily going to be an everyday player. I know a lot of fans were worried that signing Brassard might box out a player like Mark Kostelic, who appears to have locked down that number 4 center spot. And to be honest, that's not going to happen. I think at some point, Dylan Gambrell might be the odd man out here. He's still on the roster, but I think Gambrell and Brassard will probably be the 2 forwards that don't necessarily play all the time, and I wouldn't be shocked if Gambrell eventually gets placed on waivers for a demotion unless his play picks up. But he didn't have a great training camp here, in my opinion. But your 4th line is going to consist of probably Mark Kostelic and Parker Kelly, with the guys like Austin Watson or Derek Brassard going in and out. But they feel like Derek Brassard can kind of be for Ottawa the same sort of role you saw Jason Spezza play with the Toronto Maple Leafs the last couple of years of his NHL career. A guy who's near the end but still has a bit to give. He loves the game. He's a smart player, very studious that way, and can just be a good mentor, good leader, and kind of help the team on a lot of the intangible stuff. So there's really no risk there. To make that happen, they did demote Ridley Gregg to the American Hockey League. The former first-round pick will play a full season down there, but will likely be one of the top call-up options should they need somebody, especially if they need somebody who can play center at some point. I think it's best for Gregg's development, and really most of their other top players have all put in a solid season down there in the minors. You've seen Batherson do it, and Norris. Shabbat had his time down there as well. Obviously, some of their other prospects played a couple of years of college, which was just as good or better, development, like Shane Pinto, for example, Jake Sanderson. So clearly, they need to go through the right path to be ready, and they can take their time here with Ridley Gregg on that front. Now on to some other key demotions today, some other top prospects that you might be looking to find out if they're playing in the NHL or not. Some of these guys may not play right away, but they could be early call-up options, and to some degree, some of this might be a bit of a paper transaction because they had to be cap compliant before 5 o'clock Eastern time today, but as soon as they play their first game and stuff, they can start making call-ups and changing things here just in a matter of time. But the Blues had to demote Jake Neighbors down to the minors. Ville Heinola in Winnipeg got sent down. David Jiricek in Columbus And along with Ridley Gregg in Ottawa, they also demoted Jacob Bernard-Docker. William Eklund and Thomas Bordeleau, both in the Shark system, both got sent down to the Barracuda. Nick Robertson in Toronto basically got boxed out because of the Dennis Malgin signing. Malgin did really well in training camp, earned himself a spot on that second line. And just like Sheldon Keefe said, Robertson doesn't need waivers. He can just be sent down, whereas Malgin does. So it really boils down to some hard choices that way, but those things are factored in. Arber Xhekaj with the Montreal Canadiens technically made the team, but then they also announced that he was being demoted to Laval. That appears to be just a paper transaction to make sure that they're fully compliant with their roster size and all that. And to some degree as well, they can also demote players like that down to the minors on off days to save a little bit of salary cap space. That can also be part of it as well. I fully suspect Arber Xhekaj will likely be in the opening night roster and should be recalled here. They can place Paul Byron on LTIR as early as tomorrow to make room for him to come back up. But he, along with guys like Caden Gooley and Juraj Slafkovsky, are all sticking around. Make the roster here on opening night. Doesn't mean they're all stick for the whole year, but they're at least going to get the early 9-game look for sure and see if they're going to stick, or maybe if going to the minors might be what's best for them. Time will only tell them how they play. Now, onto some trade talk here. Latest on Jacob Chychrun from Elliot Friedman on the Jeff Merrick Show today, which returns after a long break for the summer in off-season. Jacob Chychrun, basically, he's still not skating, and I think a lot of that is what's holding up a deal. There's been times where it feels like it's been heating up, and there's been more talk, more rumors. Ottawa still seems to be the most aggressive, most interested, but it's not fair to say right now that a deal is imminent or close. Obviously, the fact that he's not playing is a big part of that. Clearly, it seems like Friedman's opinion states that once he starts skating, which could be like another week, that it's going to probably take to see him skate and play a bit before they get anything done. But it sounds like the player really wants this taken care of as soon as possible. Obviously, he doesn't really have a lot of say or control, but I know from a team perspective, you would be hopeful that they would want something done as quickly as well, so it's not a distraction. But they might have to come down a bit on that high asking price for a team like Ottawa or another team that's been in the mix to go ahead and give them an offer that they need to pull the trigger. But it's also believed the Ottawa Senators still want to move Nikita Zaitsev. He technically is on the opening night roster. Seen a lot of Sens fans fretting over that as well. They don't seem to want to have him there, which I completely understand. He has not played well, but just because he is technically on the roster doesn't mean he's going to play. I do believe the fact that they have him likely there as the number 7 defenseman. I think you're going to see guys like Jake Sanderson and Eric Brandstrom be in the lineup and Zaitsev be out. I think he'll only get into the lineup should they run into an injury, or if one of the other guys starts to really struggle bad or something, they want to change it up. Otherwise, I think they're still likely or rumored to be working on a deal, and essentially he's going to have to go to a team that has the space as a cap dump, and one of the few teams would either be like Chicago or Arizona. And of course, if it goes to Arizona, it's going to likely have to be in a Chychrun deal. And I think they're just kind of waiting to see where things go on that front. But I wouldn't be too worried about Zaitsev. They are trying to trade him. Just going to be a matter of time. Hard to say when that's going to come through. Also, Vancouver still looking to add on their blue line. They are still linked to a couple Penguin defensemen, and of course would have a lot of familiarity with Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford, between Marcus Pettersson, maybe Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Both defensemen are still potential guys that NHL insiders appear confident that they'll likely will get moved at some point, that the Penguins would like to make a move here. They do have more than enough capable D-men, and that they are the most likely to be traded. And obviously the connection to Vancouver, given the former staff there, makes sense, especially given the fact that they could use help on the blue line as well. We saw them pick up Riley Stillman from Chicago the other day, and it wouldn't be shocking if they added somebody else. Hard to say what kind of a trade we're looking at as far as what kind of return or anything, but still, the Canucks and Penguins are linked, and we could possibly see a deal here soon. I imagine you're going to have to get through a couple of games for teams to kind of better evaluate what they have and where things are at before we start seeing a little bit of activity early in the season. So let me know your thoughts on something discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.